Horror likely has the best return on investment in the film industry, largely due to the low production costs and broad audience appeal. And when a slasher or a creature feature makes its budget back 10 or 100-fold, it's understandable when a sequel is greenlit. So long as a franchise is making bank, studios will tend to see no reason to stop pumping out more. However, horror sequels often face the challenge of continuing a story, even if its predecessor was designed to end conclusively. If the story wraps with evil being defeated, it provides a sense of closure, but these endings can be retroactively undone if the masses want to see more. Of course, that's not the only way a horror follow-up can screw things up, as a film can conclude with a major cliffhanger or tease only for the following entry not to acknowledge it. Other times, the next installment flat-out contradicts events in a previous one, destroying any cohesion in the overarching narrative. Whether or not these drastic changes of direction or retcons worked out for the better, they absolutely ruined the previous movie's ending. I'm Sean Ferry for What Culture Horror, and here are the 10 horror movie sequels that totally ruined the previous movie's ending. Number 10. I Still Know What You Did Last Summer. Based on the novel of the same name, 1997's I Know What You Did Last Summer follows 4 friends who accidentally strike a man with their car. Not wanting to get the authorities involved, they dump the body and vow never to speak of it again. When the hook-wielding fisherman begins stalking the group the following year and taunts them for the hit and run, they realize they can't run away from their past sins. The teen slasher made over $100 million on a modest budget, so it wasn't a surprise when a sequel was greenlit and arrived 1 year later. But there was a problem. I Know What You Did Last Summer concludes with our heroine, Julie James, returning to college after she seemingly killed the fisherman. As she enters her dorm bathroom, Julie notices a message written on a mirror that reads, I still know. Before she has a chance to react, the fisherman bursts through the glass and attacks Julie, as the screen cuts to black. Even though this was a great cliffhanger, a throwaway line in I Still Know What You Did Last Summer reveals that this incident was all just a dream. Though nobody should be expecting a Shakespearean level of writing from a slasher movie, using the "it was a dream" trope to explain away this moment was the first sign this sequel was going to be terrible. Number 9. A Nightmare on Elm Street 4, The Dream Master. Although none of the A Nightmare on Elm Street sequels match the original, Nightmare on Elm Street 3, Dream Warriors came close since it had a creative premise, amazing deaths, and killer lines, especially the iconic, "Welcome to primetime, bitch." Most importantly, the threequel had a meaningful ending, since the original final girl, Nancy Thompson, gave up her life so that fellow heroes Kristen, Kincaid, and Joey could defeat Freddy Krueger once and for all. Looking back, this would have been the perfect place to end the franchise, considering how badly the follow-ups turned out. Instead, Elm Street 4, The Dream Master, was rolled out the following year. So how did the very dead Freddy come back to life? Well, a dog urinated on his grave, and I'm not even joking. Just to add salt to the wounds, the Dream Master opens with the Dream Demon slaughtering the 3 heroes from the previous film, making Nancy's sacrifice meaningless. The new protagonist, Alice, is a decent heroine, but she's not compelling enough to justify continuing the dwindling IP, and even though Elm Street 4 was successful, it's directly responsible for cheapening the franchise's legacy. Number 8. Omen IV, The Awakening. Omen 3, The Final Conflict, follows Damien Thorne as an adult now embracing his Antichrist persona and preparing to trigger Armageddon. Moments before Damien's plan comes to fruition, he's fatally stabbed by the mystical dagger of Megiddo, and in the last moments, heavenly light shines down from above, symbolizing that good has triumphed over evil. With this in mind, it made no sense when another installment, Omen IV, The Awakening, was greenlit, centering around Damien's daughter, Delia. Rather than making her the new Antichrist, the writers cooked up a needlessly complicated backstory that Delia houses an embryo that was surgically transferred to a surrogate mother so it can become Damien's true successor. Being the devil's advocate, you could justify making another Omen if the creators had a great story to tell, much like the recent prequel, The First Omen. Sadly, The Awakening follows the beats of the Omen so shamelessly it feels like a lazy remake. Worst of all, Delia and her kind of sibling emerge victorious by the time the credits roll, making Damien's defeat feel inconsequential. The Final Conflict, soundtrack aside, wasn't great, but it's worse when revisited, since its happy ending wasn't so happy after all. Number 7. Paranormal Activity 4. After the unprecedented success of Paranormal Activity, the creators could have easily churned out a samey sequel and raked in another batch of cash. Instead, Paranormal Activity 2 introduced the idea of a demonic inheritance, so the malevolent spirit, Toby, from the original is drawn to the firstborn son of the family line. This revelation explains why Toby targets Christie's son, Hunter, and also sets up a deeper narrative that could be explored in the future. Paranormal Activity 3 expanded this backstory further, revealing that there is a group of of witches called the Midwives who worship the demon. Not only that, the Coven is responsible for orchestrating the supernatural attacks in the previous films. Sadly, Paranormal Activity 4 decided to largely abandon these storylines. While Hunter is central to Paranormal Activity 4's plot, there's no direct reference to the curse or the Coven. The fourth entry doesn't retcon the previous pictures, but it's still annoying how it trades a mythology-rich narrative for a simplified horror tale. Anyone hoping to learn more about the franchise's carefully constructed backstory should have been pissed off at Paranormal Activity 4, since it adds nothing to the lore. Number 6. Jigsaw. As the title indicates, Saw, the final chapter, was meant to wrap up Lee Whannell and James Wan's Twisted franchise. This seventh film ends with a full-circle twist, where Dr. Lawrence Gordon from the original Saw is revealed as the secret apprentice of John Kramer, aka Jigsaw. After John's successor, Mark Hoffman, violated his predecessor's rules, Gordon chains Hoffman to a wall with no means of escape. So, with Kramer long dead and Hoffman dealt with, the final chapter suggests the games were finally over. But the word final means little in the realm of horror, of course, and it was only a matter of time before Saw came back. Sure enough, a follow-up, Jigsaw, was released 7 years later, centering around a new serial killer. In the end, it's revealed that pathologist Logan Nelson had become the new Jigsaw and was working with John from the very beginning. Although this entry was meant to kickstart another chapter in the Saw universe, the twist wasn't well received, and retroactively inserting characters into a timeline that's already densely packed was confusing and pointless. Also, it's silly to reveal Kramer had another helper all along, considering Logan's existence was never hinted at in the previous 7 films. Number 5. Hostel Part 2. Eli Roth's gag-inducing splatterfest Hostel begins with college student Paxton and his friends traveling across Europe. On the advice of a Dutch businessman they met on a train, the pals decide to head to a hostel in Slovakia. But to his horror, Paxton learns the facility is a front for a torture organization called the Elite Hunting Club, where the members kidnap and mutilate patrons. Though Paxton's friends are murdered, he eventually manages to escape, and when he later bumps into the Dutch businessman by chance in the closing minutes, Paxton executes him slowly and painfully, giving viewers a sense of justice and catharsis. While it was satisfying to see Paxton getting his revenge, Hostel Part 2 negates this victory by offing him in the prologue. It's understandable that this sequel wanted to kick things off with something shocking, but Paxton's off-screen demise was insultingly anticlimactic. But that's not all. Focus on Paxton bringing down the Elite Hunting Club would have been a nice way to avoid the sequel feeling like a carbon copy of the first film. However, after Paxton pops his clogs, the story fixates on a different group of characters and plays out exactly like the original. Number 4. Brahms, The Boy 2. In The Boy, Greta is a nanny hired to care for a couple's doll that represents their deceased son, Brahms. This mystery horror sets up its spooky premise by leading the audience to believe this porcelain doll is sentient, especially when paranormal events occur in the house. As a result, it's totally unexpected when the real Brahms is revealed to be alive and has been living inside the walls of his home for years. Even though The Boy seemed like it would be predictable, it caught most people off guard due to how it was the psychological drama disguised as a supernatural horror. But then Brahms' The Boy 2 nullifies that by saying, yep, it was supernatural forces all along. That sequel introduces the idea that the doll is evil and is capable of corrupting others, including the adult Brahms from the previous film. As such, Brahms' unsettling story is diluted as he was merely a puppet for a literal puppet. It's ironic since The Boy was received positively because it subverted expectations, only to be followed up by a sequel that embraced those expectations, destroying everything that made the original feel, well, original. Number 3. Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives. Though there are plenty of awful Friday the 13th sequels, A New Beginning is considered to be amongst the worst, primarily because Jason Voorhees doesn't feature. Instead, our hero Tommy Jarvis finds himself and his companions being pursued by an insane paramedic called Roy Burns, who was inspired by Jason. Roy is ultimately killed, but the final shot shows Tommy donning a hockey mask and wielding a kitchen knife, indicating he's become the new Jason. Rather than following this idea though, Friday the 13th Part 6, Jason Lives opens with Tommy traveling to Jason Voorhees' grave, hoping to cremate the hockey mask-wearing maniac in order to prevent him from coming back to life. But after Tommy opens Jason's coffin, Voorhees' corpse is struck by lightning, reviving the Crystal Lake Killer and turning him into a superpowered ghoul. To be fair, it was wise to ignore A New Beginning's ending, since the fanbase was more interested in seeing the real Jason rather than another copycat. Also, Jason Lives turned the machete-wielding psycho into an unstoppable zombie, making him far more intimidating. However, this decision makes A New Beginning worse in hindsight, since its cliffhanger never pays off. Number 2. The Halloween franchise. Considering there are 13 Halloween movies, it's hard to believe audiences thought Michael Myers was gone for good when he supposedly snuffed it in Halloween 2. But Halloween 4, The Return of Michael Myers, changed all that, revealing the titular villain somehow survived being set on fire and having his eyeballs shot out. That fourth installment finishes with Michael's evil infecting his niece, Jamie Lloyd, hinting she'll follow in her uncle's sinister footsteps. However, Halloween 5, The Revenge of Michael Myers, discards this notion and plays out like a generic slasher. And, just to add to the confusion, Halloween, The Curse of Michael Myers introduced a preposterous backstory, stating Michael Myers has been controlled by a druidic cult since day one. Luckily, Halloween H2O, 20 years later, didn't revisit this absurd notion. Instead, H2O had a great sense of finality, since it concluded with Jamie Lee Curtis as Laurie Strode lopping the head off her malevolent brother. Even then, though, Halloween Resurrection's prologue sees Laurie learn that the person she killed wasn't Michael, but an innocent paramedic dressed as the infamous psychopath. Although Michael slays his sister soon after, this was retconned again in 2018's Halloween. Looking back, it's bewildering how a straightforward slasher series ended up having the messiest story imaginable. Number 1. Alien 3. Based on the way the Alien saga has repeatedly retconned lore and discarded teased stories, most of the sequels could have received a place on this list. With that said, there's little argument that Alien 3 earned the top spot. Though it seemed impossible for an Alien follow-up to top the original, James Cameron's Aliens is regarded as one of the best sequels ever. Everyone involved brought their A-game, with the special effects, editing, atmosphere, cinematography, and performances being flawless. So much so, Sigourney Weaver even bagged a Best Actress nomination at the 1987 Academy Awards, which is a rare feat in horror. Aliens also had the perfect climax, with Ripley destroying the xenomorphs and defeating the alien queen. After an epic battle, she goes into hypersleep, with companions Hicks, Bishop, and an orphan called Newt, whom Ripley sees as a surrogate daughter. Infuriatingly, that hopeful ending is upended in Alien 3, when Ripley's vessel crash lands on a planetoid, killing everyone but herself. Because of this, everything Hicks, Bishop, and Newt endured was for nothing. Although it's common knowledge by now that Alien 3 had an apocalyptic production and underwent almost a dozen script changes, it's baffling to believe the creators thought that this was the best way to open the movie.